श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुस्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विशेषगौरवगणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्मनिधये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणे स्वयं व्यासेन कृतितां पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्बा त्वामनुसन्दधां भगवद्गीते विभेद्वेषिणीम्। नारायणपरो व्यक्तादण्डमव्यक्तसम्भवम् अण्डस्यान्तस्तु मे लोकः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी अवतीर्णश्च कालट्यां केदारेन्दरितश्चयः चतुष्पीठप्रतिष्ठादाजयताच्चङ्गरो गुरुः शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तं पङ्कीकृतमबोध्यः किङ्करे ससामाय शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये. Previously, you were looking at when the question comes, if one follows the karma yoga, when will I have the purification of the mind as I perform this action without any desires? As a karma yoga, I perform my duties without any desire attached to it. When will I have that purification of mind? So to that, Bhagavan has explained that yada te mohakalilam buddhirvati darishyati tada agatamsi nirvedam shrutasya cha. When your mind will go beyond the turbidity of delusion, then you will acquire the dispassion for what has to be heard and what has been heard. So that means whatever that you hear, all those things, because you are not interested in any of them, because all the Shrutis and all the Vedas, Purvaga Vedas, whatever you hear saying that this is what you need to do and all those things, you feel that irrelevant because you have passed that stage and you are in the Atma Jnana, you are realizing you are in the Samadhi stage. So then he goes on and he explains in the next shloka, in the 53rd shloka, which we were looking at. He says that Shruti vipratipanna yada stasya nischala samadha vachala buddhis tada yogam avapsati. So when your mind has become bewildered by hearing, will become unshakable and steadfast in the Atma, in the self, then you will attain the yoga that will arise from discrimination. I think we were looking at last time this shloka. So the construction here is of this sentence is, when your mind remains steady in the self, in the Atma, like a lamp in a windless space, after becoming nischala, that means it becomes free from impossibility, asambhavana, and the contrary thoughts like viparita, called viparita bhavana, and that mind becomes achala. That means it's not polluted by dissimilar ideas as a result of long, earnest, and unbroken practice of satkara, like as is mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, like brahmacharya, study, faith, and all those things. As one has those things, then you will have this. So you will have that. So here we looked at, I think, asambhavana, the idea of when the mind becomes nischala, when it is free from the idea of impossibility. That is asambhavana. Asambhavana is where you have with regards to the pramanas or the valid means of knowledge in the form of Upanishad, which says Tattvamasi, that means you are that, or you think that they do not teach about the non-dual Brahman. Okay, so you think that's not true, that there is no proof of that. And also the asambhavana thoughts say that it with regards to prameya, the object of the knowledge, he says that one think that the non-dual Brahman is absurdity. It does not exist. There is no such thing as Brahman. Okay, it can in reality, in any way, it cannot be identical. One cannot be identical with Brahman. So those kind of dismissive thoughts that come in the mind, so those will not be there, Nischala. And also, it will not have contrary thoughts, Viparita Bhavana. Viparita Bhavana means uh, the one where I'm a human being, I'm not Brahman, or the contrary thought that separates us, an individual from individual jiva from the Brahman. So that's the type of thoughts will not be there. And also it becomes achala. It is not polluted by dissimilar ideas. So it's steady in that. Then tada, then at that time, yogam avapsasi. You will attain the yoga. You will attain that yoga in the form of identity of this jiva and supreme self, the Paramatma. They are the non-relational realization arises from the sentences like, for example, Tattvamasi. So that arises at that time, and that is the result of all the yogas. So the result of all the yogas that arises at that time, the akhanda realization, non-relational realization arises from the like, for example, Tattvamasi, the Upanishad statements like Tattvamasi Mahavakyas, like Tattvamasi, which says that you are that, thou are that. So those kind of realization arises. So it says that there is no differentiation between Jiva and Paramatma. Right? So I am that Paramatma. So that Atma realization arises at that time. So here again, this mention about Madhusudana Sri Madhusudana Saraswati in his Vakyana, he mentions about akhanda realization, non-relational realization. That means, in which case there is even the absence of the idea that the relationship of unity between Jiva and Brahman. So there is different steps, right? So one is where we say Jiva and Brahman are different. Okay, so I am this body, that's one thing, and then Jiva is different from body, and then Paramatma is completely different. And then the second step is, I am this Jiva, but Paramatma is different. Then there is Jiva and Brahma are same, right? That realization. What here Sri Madhusudana Saraswati says in his Vakyana is, this akhanda means here that even that person, that yogi who has that realization, does not even think that my jiva and that Paramatma both are same. He thinks that everything is one. Okay, when everything is one, you can't differentiate it is mine, it is that. Okay, so that differentiation, even that differentiation is not there at that time. So then again, owing to the absence of any other goal, you will become self-fulfilled. A man of steady wisdom becomes self-fulfilled, and that's the meaning of Shloka. So now Bhagavan starts explaining about the characteristics, attributes of a perfect muni, a sage, a sannyasi, or a yogi. He starts explaining about the characteristics, attributes of such a person in the upcoming shlokas. So Shankaracharya in his Bhashya, he says that having got to an occasion to inquiry at this time, Arjuna, with the view of knowing the characteristics of such a realized person. So we talked about when this realization is going to come, right? So when that realization comes, okay, so what are those characteristics? That samadhi prajna, he talks with Shankaracharya mentions the word here, samadhi prajna. So that means the one who has realization of that Atma. So Arjuna, so he wants to know the characteristics of that person. So that's why here he asks about that. In the next shloka, he asks about that. So again, here the word samadhi here is meant that enlightenment. Okay, samadhi prajna, the word is meant as enlightenment arising from the discrimination which has been spoken in the commentary previously here, previous verse. Right. So the steadfastness or the adherence which the munis have in that enlightenment is called jnana-nishta, steadfastness in knowledge. Okay, so again, attaining realization is one thing, adherence or sticking to that steadfastness in that is another thing. Okay, and what we are looking here is the munis who have that consistently in that realized state. Okay, it is not I realize this and then we all kind of feel at some point, right? So after listening to a lot of Vedanta lectures and things like that, we feel, okay, I am that Paramatma. But very next second, we are attached to this samsara and this world and everything. Our mind starts wandering around everywhere, right? So it's not there. So it may be a fraction of a second we might think. When everybody we are hearing lectures, hours and hours of lecture, it might feel like, yeah, that probably is true. What you're saying is true. But then the mind moves away from that. But here the Muni, Arjuna is asking, is not like that. He is that adherence to that knowledge and realization. And so Arjuna here, in the next shlokas, Arjuna asks that question. He asks, so the shloka is 54th shloka. Arjuna uvacha, Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha, samadhistasya keshava, sthitadihi kim prabhasheta, kimasita vrajeta kim. Arjuna says, O Keshava, what is the description of the man of steady wisdom who is self-absorbed? And how does the man of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit? How does he move about? Okay, he is asking for the characteristics, attributes of that person who has realized. So if you look at the meanings of the words in this shloka, Arjuna uvacha means Arjuna said, Sthita prajnasya, the one who is steady buddhi and in that intellect, in that samadhi state. Ka means what? Bhasha means language or talk. Samadhista means situated in that divine consciousness. Keshava is addressing Krishna, the one who killed Keshi, demon Keshi. Sthitadihi means enlightened person. Kim means what? Prabhasheta means talks. Kim means how. Asita means sits. Vrajeta means walks. Kim means how. So now looking at the meaning for this shloka, and Sri Shankaracharya in his Bhashya, he starts, the shloka says here that, O Keshava, what is the Bhasha? What is the description, the language for the how is he described by the others, right? So again, Bhasha, normal translation, means language, right? But here, what is the Bhasha? It is not asking whether he speaks Sanskrit or English or Hindi or another language. He is asking for the description, okay? Because you are identified through that Bhasha. So he is asking, what is the description? How do you describe such a person? That, who is that person? Sthita prajna. So how do you describe that Sthita prajna, the man of steady wisdom, the man who has that realization, who thinks that I am Supreme Brahma, Ahamasmi Param Brahma, who thinks that Ahamasmi Param Brahma, okay, who has that realization, who thinks that I am the Supreme Brahman, and he remains, that person who remains steady in that thought, that realization, what is the description of that? And samadhistasya, so of the one who is self-absorbed. So the person who is self-absorbed, who has that realization, who thinks that I am the Supreme Brahman and remains steady in that, what is the description of that? So here again, though through what characteristics is a man who is self-absorbed and who is steady in wisdom is described by others? That's the question here. And Sthita Prajna is again one in Samadhi state or some Uh, for example, Sri Madhusudan Saraswati in his Vakyana, he distinguishes between two states here, okay? And in Acharya Shankaracharya, in his Bhashya, he does not differentiate samadhi states into different types of samadhis. But Sri Madhusudan Saraswati in his Vakyana, even though that has been disputed and counter-argued by few others as well. So, but just for completeness, I'll say what he says. He talks about two different states of samadhi. Okay, Madhusudan Saraswati. One is the person who is fully absorbed in samadhi. Another one is who just comes out of the samadhi. Okay, samadhi state. So, but Shankaracharya in his Bhashya, he does not make any differentiation of those states. Then also Arjuna here asks, or how does that Sthitadihi, okay, the man of steady wisdom himself, Prabhasheta, how does he speak? Again, simple answer would be he speaks through his mouth, but that's not he's asking. What does his speech look like? Okay, and how does he sit? And how does he move about? How does he prajeta? How does he kim prajeta? Kim prabhasheta? Kim? All those questions here Arjuna asks in the second half of this shloka. So this is to say that what kind of sitting or moving or speaking that person does. Because through this verse, Arjuna asks for a description of a man in a steady wisdom, sthita prajna. So that's what Shankaracharya says. Now, just to elaborate a little bit further, samadhi, the word used here, again, if you look at Yoga Śāstra, there are two types of samadhis mentioned. One is dhyana samadhi, another one is jnana samadhi. Dhyana samadhi is also known as sabija samadhi, and jnana samadhi is known as nirbija samadhi. Okay, so when somebody is said to be in dhyana samadhi, they completely forgets all the external aspects that's happening. They focuses their mind completely on one thing, and they are in that meditation mode, in that dhyana samadhi. And then the other one is jnana samadhi, which is thinking about atma swarupa, okay, that rupa, that form of the Paramatma, and uniting oneself with that Atma, and there is not seeing any difference. So at that point, all the samskaras that's there in one person over many, many births, everything, those things do not affect that person. And that is Jnana Samadhi. And here in this shloka, Bhagavan is talking about when Samadhi Stasya. So he is talking about the person who is in Jnana Samadhi, not temporarily somebody focusing mind or somewhere. He's talking about Jnana Samadhi, who has that realization, who thinks that Aham Asmi Param Brahma, who thinks that I am the Supreme Brahman, who is in that, remains steady in that state, who is self-absorbed in that. Such a person is what Bhagavan is mentioning. So total here, 4 questions have been asked. So the next 17 shlokas of this Adhyaya, this Samkhya Yoga Adhyaya, second chapter in Bhagavad Gita, answers this 4 questions. Okay. So again, this second chapter has been split into many parts we already looked at, right? First 10 shlokas, we looked at Arjuna asking why I should engage in this battle, and then Bhagavan talks about from 11 to 30th shloka, he talks about Atma Vichara, which is called Sankhya, and then he talked about 30 to 39, he talks about what is the karma, why it is, if you look at as a duty, you should do it, and then from 39 onwards, he looks at Karma Yoga, and then last few shlokas, we looked at Bhagavan explaining the benefits of Karma Yoga. Right? Now he is explaining how that person, who is realized person, attributes and characteristics of that person. He is looking at that, and Bhagavan is going to explain over the next 17 shlokas. Vedavyasa has gave this Bhagavan's answer through these 17 shlokas to us, and we look at those 17 shlokas. Those 4 questions are answered. What are those 4 questions? Ka Bhashya. What's his description? Right? So the description. And then, what's his identity? So that's what he's asking. What's his identity? And then, Kim Prabhasheta. How does he speak? Kim Masita. How does he sit? Kim Vrajeta. How does he move about? So these 4 questions are asked. How does he, what's his description? How does he speak, sit, and move about? So, Sri Madhusudan Saraswati, in his Vakyana, in his Bhashya, he classifies these 4 questions into 2 groups. Okay. The first question, okay, Ka Bhashya. What's his description? Sri Madhusudan Saraswati explains that this is about the person who is in the Samadhi state, Okay. And the other 3 questions, Kim Prabhasheta, Kim Prabhasheta, Kim Vrajeta, Kim Asita, those questions, he talks about the person who has come out of Samadhi state. Okay. But Acharya Shankara Bhagavad Pada in this in his Bhashya, he does not, as I said, he does not differentiate between these 2 states. He is talking about the Jnana Samadhi only. So the person, the characteristics of the person in the Jnana Samadhi, but just for completeness, I'll just quickly explain that. So again, Madhusudan Saraswati in his Bhashya, he says that everywhere in this verse, the verbs are used as a potential mode, conveying the sense of probability. Like, for example, so also when he says Kim Masita, how does he sit? Which means that how does he regulate the external organs in order to control the mind that has emerged from the Samadhi. Okay. So Kim Masita means, as I said here, he is talking about the person that has emerged from one who is in the Samadhi state. How does, when he comes out of that Samadhi state, how does he sit? How does he behave, speak? Okay, how does he walk about? All those questions. And similarly, and when he does not exercise his control over sense organs, Kim Vrajeta? How does he move about? And how does he accept the other objects? And the meaning is of what kind of speaking, that is Prabhasheta, sitting, moving, done by him, which are distinct to those who are unenlightened person. Because we all, how we move is different because we are attached to the objects of this world. But that person is not. So how, when he comes out of that Samadhi state, how does he move about? How does he speak? How does he sit? What does he do? And thus again, these 4 questions have been asked. One regard to the man of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna, who is in Samadhi. And then the other 3, he says that are the questions about the person who has emerged from the Samadhi. So this again, I repeat, this is Sri Madhusudan Saraswati's Bhashya. He differentiated the questions into 2 groups. One in Samadhi, steady in Samadhi. Another one is who emerged from the Samadhi. Okay. Again, by addressing, he also, Sri Madhusudan Saraswati says, by addressing Bhagavan here as Keshava, Arjuna indicates that you yourself are the inner controller of all the people, and you are capable of speaking about those difficult matters. That's why, tell me, answer me all these questions, explain me all these things. So that's what Arjuna means. So now we look at what Shankaracharya again says in continuation of his Bhashya. So Shankaracharya says that in the verses beginning from 55, in the next verses, starting from the next verse, 55 verse, where we look at Prajaheti Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan and so on, from 55th verse, Shloka, and ending with the completion of this chapter, that is another 17 shlokas, the instruction about the characteristics of a man of steady wisdom and the disciplines that he has to pass through has been given both for the ones who has indeed applied himself in the steadfastness of the jnana, in the jnana yoga nishta, and after having renounced duties and rights from the very beginning, and also for those who have applied himself after having passed through the path of karma yoga. Okay, so what Shankaracharya says is the verses starting from 55th one onwards, what has been given here is the characteristics of that sthita prajna, okay, man of steady wisdom, and the disciplines that he has to pass through. Okay, the characteristics, the attributes that that person is having, because those things are applied by that jnana nishta, that jnana yoga nishta, who was because those things are to be applied by everybody who has not attained that stage, right? Because that's the path everybody has to follow to attain the realization. Because if you look at the person who has realized, then only you can follow that path, right? So what Shankaracharya is saying is, even though Bhagavan is describing the characteristics, attributes of that sthita prajna, that man of steady wisdom who has attained that knowledge and is steady in that knowledge, that realization, even then, those things are to be applied for the person who has renounced the rights and duties and who is from the very beginning. That means even when one is in brahmacharya mode, even then if somebody has renounced and became sannyasi, and also those who have gone through the karma yoga, that is got married and gone through their karma yoga, performing the karma, and through that they are want to attain this jnana and then this realization, or on the path of that realization. That those characteristics Bhagavan is going to explain now applies to both categories. Okay, so here again the difference is two things. Okay, so both these attributes, if you have to follow, it will be applied to a sannyasi. But sannyasi is of two types. Okay, so one is called vidvat sannyasa, another one is vividisha sannyasa. Okay, so vidvat sannyasa is the one that renunciation that naturally follows renunciation that naturally follows the realization. Okay, and the vividisha is one where formal renunciation for the undertaking of disciplines led to renunciation. Again, the difference is the one, for example, gives up their everything. Okay, they renounces everything and then walks in the path of that realization and then achieves the realization. Other one is they already realized. Okay, when they are born or when they are in the early age itself, they have this self-realization, and then because they have realization, they are already renounced. Okay, so that's what the two types here mentioned. So vidvat is the one who already naturally renounced, and the second one is they renounce and then they realize. Okay, which lead to realization. So what Bhagavan here, the characteristics he is going to explain from 55th shloka, he is going to apply to both types, those who are naturally renounced and steadfast in that jnana yoga, and also those who are going through the karma yoga. So because Shankaracharya here says that because in all the scriptures, in all the Adhyatma Śāstras, without any exception, dealing with spirituality, so in all the Adhyatma Śāstras dealing with spirituality, whatever are the characteristics of a man of realization are themselves presented as disciplines for an aspirant, because these characteristics are the results of the effort. So again, So here Bhagavan Shankaracharya says that Kritartha Lakshanani Yani Tanyeva Sadhanani Upadishyante Yatna Sadhyatvat Yani Yatna Sadhyani Sadhanani Lakshanani cha Bhavanti. So the characteristics that Bhagavan is going to explain of a man of realization, the man of steady wisdom, okay, that characteristics here they are presented as a disciplines for an aspirant like us, okay, or anybody, any sannyasi who has taken sannyasa to lead the path of realization, right? So, or anybody in the karma yoga, for all of them, for an aspirant, the characteristics Bhagavan is going to explain is presented as a discipline. That's the discipline we have to follow. That's the path we should follow, because those characteristics are the results of the effort. So if you put this karma yoga, this path we follow, then that's where we end up. That's the kind of realization we are going to have. The characteristics Bhagavan is going to explain. That's where we are going to end up. That's what we will achieve, because that's the result of the effort. So that's what Shankaracharya says here. And those that are the disciplines requiring effort, they become the characteristics of a man of realization. So if you follow these disciplines, then they themselves becomes the characteristics of the. So it is same, right? So you either say that these are the characteristics of a realized man, so I should follow that path, or you say that I'm following this path because then I will become that what he is today, right? So that's what Shankaracharya says in as a introduction to the next set of shlokas, starting from 55th one. So we'll just quickly look at the 55th shloka, what Bhagavan responds from here onwards. So Bhagavan, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanevatmana tushtaha sthita prajnastadochate. So the Bhagavan says, O Partha, when one is one fully renounces all the desires that have entered in the mind and remains satisfied in the self, alone by the self, then he is called a man of steady wisdom. So he explains, he answers the first question here, okay, Sthita Prajnasya Ka Bhashya. What's his description? Bhagavan explains here. We'll look at that in a little bit detail. First, let's look at the word by word. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha means Bhagavan said. Prajahati means discards, gives up. Yada means when. Kaman means selfish desires. Sarvan means all. Partha is addressing Arjuna, son of Pritha. And Mana Gatan means of the mind. Atmani means of the self. Eva means only. Atmana means the purified mind, the Atma. Tushta means satisfied. Sthita Prajna means one who is steady in his intellect. Tada means at that time. Uchyate means is said. Now, if you look at the explanation for this shloka, this here shloka starts with the first characteristics of that attribute of that realized man. Okay, the Sthita Prajna, who is steady in his realization. The first characteristics we see here is the satisfaction in the self itself. Okay, so this is the first characteristics we see. So we'll look at many of them. If you want to make a note of them. The first characteristic we see is satisfaction in the self. So Bhagavan here says that, O Partha, when at the time when one fully renounces or discards all the kaman, all the desires, variety of desires. Okay, so when one fully renounces all the desires that have entered the mind or entered the heart, manogatan, that means entered the heart, entered the mind. So again, particular tendencies of the mind, for example, desire, will, etc., which have already elaborated under, so in different Shāstras, it's explained in 5 different categories. Pramana, like knowledge, viparyaya means illusion, vikalpa means fancy, a consequent of a word sense, nidra means sleep, smriti, recollection. All these explained in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So the different states of mind. When one is certainly becomes free from all the mental modifications at that time. So that's what Manogatan here means. So all those things that have entered mind. So again, another meaning for the word Manogatan, if you look at this, by the word Manogatan or belonging to the mind, Bhagavan also means here that the desires that can be renounced because they are not properties of Atma. They are not properties of the Atma. That's why they can be renounced. If they were the properties of the Atma, then they cannot be renounced. Because Bhagavan says that when a fully renounces, okay, prajahati sarvan kaman manogatan, so one fully renounces those things, that means these desires can be renounced. They are not properties of the Atma. That's why he says that it is intrinsic and it can be renounced. But they are the qualities of the mind, hence they can surely be renounced by renouncing the mind. Okay, so Bhagavan here says that these desires are not qualities of the Atma. Instead, they are qualities of the mind, and you can renounce it. That's the meaning here, Manogatan. Again, Manogatan, if you look at Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says as Kama Sankalpa, Vichikitsa, Shraddha, Ashraddha, Dhitri, Dhriti, Adhriti, Rihi, Dihi, Bihi, Ityetam, Sarva Manaiva. So, mind means here, Brihadaranyaka says that Kaman, desire, Sankalpa means decision making or deciding something. Vichikitsa means Samshaya, doubts. Shraddha means belief. Ashraddha means disbelief, or do not believing in something. Dhriti means dhairya, mental strength. Adhriti means mental fear of anything that's future in might happen. Rihi means shame about something that we have done or something like that, those shame that in the mind. Dihi means showing intelligence, some sort of intelligence, showing something. Bihi means external fear. These are the 10 phases of the mind. So that's what Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says. So the person who here, Manogatan, who is given up all those things, such a person, okay, when all those things have been given up, then that's the first half of this shloka. Then we look at the second part. Okay, here you might say that when person has renounced, give up all those things, discards all those things, right? So you might then he will start looking at the Atma inside himself. That is the second part. But before we go there, a question might come. Okay, so if one has given up all the desires, okay, if one has given up all the desires, what is he doing? Okay, what is motivating him, or what is doing him? Is it not that a particular kind of contentment which is recognizable through the sign of serenity of face is noticeable in the man of wisdom? How can that happen to all the desires have been given up or renounced by somebody and things like that? Such a question might come. So we will look at that, how that's explained, and the second half of the shloka next time when we gather.